Today's all about digital content. So I wanted to start off by recapping the two big points. One being the concept of digital humanism. Digital humanism, so humanism being the philosophical and ethical stance that emphasizes the value and agency of human beings. And it's through humanity and through identity that really drives the content forward. The second biggest point as it pertains to content was this notion of digital to analog. So really making sure that the content that we create that is created for the consumer really impacts their day-to-day lives in the real world. So moving forward into today is how do you get through the clutter? You know, knowing that fundamental or those fundamentals, how do you break through the clutter? So BuzzFeed, as early as early 2014, Jonah, our founder, was speaking at South by Southwest, so a large conference in Austin, Texas, and really laid out this notion of this cross-platform global network. So that's where I'll start today. A few of these slides, again, are familiar, but it really starts with the BuzzFeed.com, the BuzzFeed app, the O&O, the owned and operated properties. But it's through this larger network that we've created through Facebook, through Instagram, through Snapchat, really finds the audience where they're at. And it's through that content and through those platforms is how we reach them. And it's the trust that we've developed with that audience. These are pretty small for you guys in the back as well. So anything from Tasty, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Tasty, to Nifty is a DIY franchise that spawned off of Tasty, to science, to news, to humor content through the theme of identity. It all lives within these different channels on these different platforms. So it is cross-platform, but it's also across borders as well. So my team really tries to understand these global trends. We have other teams as well that we work with that help adapt those global trends. So if we see something that's really working in the UK, the US, we can easily and quickly adapt that for India or other markets that we're catering to. One of the biggest examples of this was the large news story that we broke, I forget when, I think it was the middle of 2016, around the tennis racket. So we really unearthed with BBC News the point shaving scandal that was happening widespread in tennis. So that really got legs, so we quickly adapted that, different languages, different markets, to hit every audience that we connect with. In fact, I'll move away here so you guys can see the whole map. So we're in 26 different countries, whether that be an office, which is indicated with the yellow flag. So we have an office in Mumbai. So again, global network that we've created with our content, but with our employees, our editorial staff, and our creative staff as well. Really, our content is viewed 7 billion times. The 44 million Facebook audience in India on Facebook just shows those scale numbers, but it's really not about the scale. But really, it's about this concept of virality and how people are sharing. So really, it's about this tactical and functional efficiency. And again, as I alluded to earlier, that humanity and identity is really the driver of that virality. This concept here, it looks a little confusing and I'll explain it, is how the shift in sharing and why people share, historically till now. So our former CMO used to work at both Motown Records and Island Def Jam. So those are two large music labels in the US. Motown started in the late 60s, Def Jam in the late 90s. Motown was Diana Ross, the Four Tops, Smokey Robinson, eventually Michael Jackson. Def Jam in the late 90s was Public Enemy, Jay-Z, eventually Kanye West. The reason why Motown succeeded was this top-down approach, really trying to assimilate the music to popular culture, to white America. So it was really about the aspiration concept. Whereas Def Jam flipped that around. Def Jam was all about authenticity, the real life troubles and struggles of African American culture and the black lives in America. So what we're seeing today is that bottom-up approach where the individual is the curator. The news content, the trusted sources that are showing up in their feed are personalized. They are sharing part of themselves. They're sharing a gift to the world. So as part of the media, historically, we've been really having this top-down approach. We've been the judge and the jury of what is driving pop culture and what should be in front of people's eyeballs and what they should be listening to. But again, it's been shifted. It's been flipped on its head. This is when I'd show some of the numbers of why people are sharing. Again, it kind of alludes to the personalized reason why content's a gift. I wanted to allude to 10 years ago. This is ever evolving. 10 years ago when BuzzFeed was in the cat meme and the cat GIF game. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that side of BuzzFeed. We still have that. But again, 10 years ago, it was a different world. People wanted to share things that were just humorous and funny. Something with my friend or my mom when I was in college, sending her a cute GIF, or she would send me the cat hanging in the tree and hang in there, something like that. So today, again, it's all about part of your soul, part of your identity, and that's why you're sharing. Really, my job and the data team's jobs at BuzzFeed is really to understand, listen, respond with signs of engagement, signals as we call it. So really understanding clicks, shares, engagement, really learning and iterating. One of the biggest questions I got yesterday, and I think it's a great question, is, through Tasty's success, through Nifty's success, do we fail? And the answer to you is we fail more than we succeed. It's that test and learn philosophy. And usually we're failing on the editorial side as opposed to the branded side. But my team really uses those learnings on the editorial side to inform branded content. So yes, we fail tremendously. And that's actually the part that I look forward to, is really kind of picking up those signals and how we're failing, and then further iterate off of what we're seeing as successful. Again, Tasty is far and away the most shared page on Facebook when it comes to shares per post. I'm not going to show the graph as I showed yesterday, but Tasty was an example of this test and learn philosophy. Really started as this experiment. We saw that food content is really resonating, really trying to impact the day-to-day lives with recipes, healthy options, things of that nature. Really turned into, we further iterated off of that, then turned into something entirely different as soon as we put the camera above the food. That top-down approach and the hands cooking the meal really felt like the audience's hands, whereas simple, easy, aesthetically pleasing. That really then took off, where we really listened to the signals. And now we have Tasty Junior, Mom versus Chef. We have Tasty in 5 to 6 different countries now. Nifty spawned from that discovery. Nifty is a DIY platform or a franchise that really has the same sort of concept, roughly the top down based on the crafts that you're trying to put together. Aesthetically pleasing, quick motion capture. Franchise really spawned from Tasty, and we're seeing all these different franchises spawning from that element based on the things that we've learned. So it's not just about social action. We really want to drive the action for the brands. So one thing that we did is in 2016, as an example of things that we were passionate about. So this writer here, Dave, wrote about chicken fries. It was discontinued in 2012, and then again in 2014. So what we did was, we drafted this post here about what we missed from our childhood, and really got behind it in terms of the tweet storms, the mega threads, making it a social conversation. And what ended up happening was it had impact with Burger King. It really shifted in terms of what they were actually offering their consumers. Their CEO actually attributed their 7% increase in sales the quarter after this to BuzzFeed and other similar publishers for helping this conversation. This is one of the first examples of brand integration that we had on Tasty. So this is the Oster Grill. The Oster Grill had tremendous feedback. So again, it was making burgers, bacon, you flip it and some of the grease pours out, whatever. A lot of it was about, oh, this food looks great, but it was ultimately about where do I buy that grill? How can I find that grill? This is just a random sample of some of the comments that we saw from that post, or from that video. A lot of it was intent, was positivity. In fact, we saw that, the Oster Grill was sold out of every, at Amazon and every digital platform, as well as in store as well. So going specifically to India, the Indian audience, some of these stats, and the percentage actually came off again. Why Indian audience shares? And this is a global trend as well. This is what we see in any market that we really look into and that we really create content for, is 38% feel motivated to promote a brand that they feel is personal connected to. It speaks their language, speaks to them. Reflective of me, 32% more likely to promote, share something that was branded that had a message directly towards them, as reflective of them as a person, as an individual. Reflective of their loved ones, 50% more likely to share that content, and this is again the Indian audience on BuzzFeed, share that content if it was reflective of loved ones, if it really reflects their loved ones' personality, behaviors. So again, going back to this notion of it being a gift of oneself, and also part of this connection with another, their loved one, their family members, their friends. So how does this all impact your brand's effectiveness? So this is the new stuff here. So what we did was, we worked with our social partners. Specifically, the example I'm going to show here is did a lot of work with Facebook. We've done, obviously, this test and learn over and over for the number of years now. The challenge being, as you guys probably know, there's different limitations across platform. It's hard to tell some of these stories. So again, with the partnership of Facebook, we really dug into our content. But really the main takeaway here is what we call the trifecta. So really understanding how franchise, creative, and audience really works together. Franchise, the pages, the connection, the feeling that resonates, and the emotions that resonate with the people that trust BuzzFeed as part of their day-to-day lives. Creative, using our test and learn approach, we truly understand when and how brand integration should take place, what is too much, what is too little. And our creative team, again, it's a data-driven approach, but they are the creatives, and we value their opinion as much as they value the research and the data behind it. Audience, so we have a distribution engine, or a smart distribution engine. We have proprietary audiences and very specific and nuanced niche audiences that we reach, and we'll get into why that's so impactful. So again, all these together, the power of three is what kind of creates that impactful approach to working with a brand and their message. So again, the methodology of what we did recently, and this is hot off the presses, so this is you guys are one of the first audiences we've actually put this in front of. So we work with Facebook, and we did over 25 tests in 2 different markets. The other market outside of US being UK. Again, a lot of trends that we're seeing is global. We're going to expand a lot of this research to other markets to see exactly what those differences are. We looked at co-branded video, we looked at Nifty, and we looked at Tasty. 4 different methodologies. Ask me afterwards what those were, and I could allude to that. Going into each of those different puzzle pieces, first being the franchise and the pages, and that emotional connection that the audience feels towards those pages. We see the higher view duration for Tasty audiences compared to non-Tasty audience. We see 70% are interested in seeing more Tasty and Nifty content after seeing the video with brand integration. We really see our audience not stepping away from the branded content, really leaning in. They trust the BuzzFeed voice, they trust the message, the brand integration is seamless and it's not in their face, and we see that there's a lot of engagement and there's a lot of that view duration that follows. So this really speaks to the creative side. 7 times the ad recall for videos with brand integration for those without. So what this speaks to is that test and learn philosophy that we've really incorporated for the number of years that I've been working there, and the years before that, I've been there for 2 years. Really understanding what's too much, what's too little based on your brand's life cycle. There's an analogy that Edwin Wong, who actually leads my entire group at research, uses, and I'm actually steal from him. So he equates this to a party. And if I were to walk into a party as a small brand and tried to be the party, I would ruin it. Like I couldn't handle walking into this room and being the party. If I was Jay-Z, or if Jay-Z walks into a party, he is the party. And what the party is in this analogy is Tasty, is Nifty, are those BuzzFeed properties. And again, through that self-awareness as a brand, and what part of that life cycle you're in dictates how much that brand integration should take place, and also accepting being a part of the party, and that will lift that brand into being that life of the party. But if you're Jay-Z, you're going to be the party regardless. So that's the analogy that we like to kind of compare this to. Again, that right level, that harmony between the amount of brand integration for your brand, and again, really kind of seeing the benefits of having that native, that integration within the video. So this speaks to the audience. So 80% of those reached through BuzzFeed audience targeting are new or lapsed users, so users that are coming back into the fold. So we tested this out versus some of the Facebook audiences, and what we learned is these audiences are proprietary to BuzzFeed, really deliver in terms of engagement, view duration, all those key metrics. So this is the first time that we're really seeing the benefits in terms of the tests through Facebook of what we've been preaching for so long through those challenges. So in a nutshell, at a very, very high level, we've come up with these best practices in terms of working with a brand for Facebook and that platform. Introduce yourself quickly. There's a slot right up front where a brand should be introduced. A few seconds really drives awareness, drives recall. The natural integration is very important. It's as you can see in this example here, we can see that she's drinking something like a soda pop. Very, very seamless integration with the content. Nothing is forced, and again, going back to the example I said earlier, is really trying to find that perfect balance, that harmony of what works for your brand and really what works for the BuzzFeed audience based on the intelligence and the knowledge that we've gained through this test and learn philosophy. The setup for success, it really not only depends on that life cycle and where your brand is, but then also what is the brand's KPIs? What is the brand trying to achieve? Is it a lot of views? Is it a lot of tonnage? And through these presentations and through our learning, that sharing is the big component that we like to push, because that is that intimate connection with that user. But based on the KPIs, we can then tinker with the brand integration and how much the brand is featured, so on and so forth, to really meet your needs based on the learnings that we possess. So know your audience. BuzzFeed creates engaging content tailored for our audiences. So knowing that audience and knowing how nuanced and niche it is, we have the ability to kind of dive deep through our distribution arm. So we have a team of, I think it's like 50 now, who are solely responsible for understanding our audience and distributing it across our platform and globally. So you guys are probably wondering, all right, it's great for awareness, recall, but really does it work? So a few stats that have emerged recently. For a CPG brand to the left, a home goods brand to the right, we see to the left, for every dollar spent, incremental $1.20 in sales. Sorry, I'm not good with conversions in terms of dollars to rupees or whatever else, but that's a significant return on ad spend for CPG brand in this specific example. For the home goods, we see an 8% purchase intent point increase. So again, this is 8 times the Facebook norm. So really understanding the audience and all those best practices that I just alluded to here really drove the success and really showed that it's not only driving that awareness, the top of the funnel, but it's really driving the ROI and actually impacting the business in a positive way. So this is a little bit confusing here. So what this is really showing is for brand favorability, we looked at this specific luxury brand. We see that we tested the seed, we tested the social against the control group for each of these. The tested seed was about 10 percentage points higher than the control group, whereas the tested social was around 20% or 20 points higher than the control group. Really alludes to the efficiency and ties back to and ladders back up to the money spent and how much the campaign costs drop when you look at there's a bug here. When you look at the test social, you earn the traffic created as 20% lift in views while decreasing campaign costs by 20%. So the CPV goes down tremendously. So that was really all about the effectiveness, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the new content from yesterday. But really, when we look deeper in what's happening in India, it's very similar to what we see globally and what we're seeing in the US. So this concept and this notion of this change in culture, really challenging traditional norms, things of that nature. We see that resonating in the US, we see it resonating in India. This quote here, this is actually a quote from one of our editors in the India office. So our Indian editorial is a bold approach to storytelling. They really tackle taboo topics in a very thoughtful and nuanced manner. So it's in a landscape dominated by traditional narratives and institutional legacy. So here's some examples of some top performing content that we really push the boundaries on. And again, this is something that's very similar to other markets and some of the things that we've seen in the US, Canada, Brazil, all over. So specifically, this change in culture, we really see the change in really defying gender norms and really pushing the boundary in terms of demographics and psychographics. In the US specifically, we see that there's a mixing of cultures. There's a mixing of race, ethnicities. Even gender is now on a spectrum. It's not binary anymore. So with those changing cultures and with these changing demos and psychographics, how do you reach to these evolving parts of the population as well as the individual that's constantly evolving as well? Individuals can easily search for new identities. It's as easy as looking on the Google search bar, going back to Google. It's how do you really tap into that? How do you really connect with an audience that's always evolving while the culture is always evolving? So going back to this notion of challenging gender norms, challenging the status quo, we see a huge example of this in this content that was that produced quite well for India, embracing the evolving traditional concepts. I'm a woman who doesn't have or want kids, and I'm happy. So this falls in one of the buckets that really, really resonate from a very high level in terms of the themes for Indian content, and that being personal narratives. Personal narratives specifically speaking of the struggle of a woman in Indian culture and the subversions that she goes through. So going back to the big premise of all this is really embracing the individual, empowering, surprising, connecting, really redefining how you're approaching individuals as they evolve, as culture evolves, as this long tail of culture emerges, these niche personalities, these niche interests, these passions all emerging. How do you really connect with that? So going back to those trends that we see resonating in India, those personal narratives and opinion-based essays, that I just alluded to, specifically speaking to women. The leaving home and coming back home. This is another huge theme that we see perform quite well in India. So this is speaking again to that mix of cultures. We see a lot of moving away from India, assimilating to other cultures, and moving back and trying to, going to the last theme, really embrace the tradition and culture, the Indian culture, of how they grew up, their parents' culture, and how this new culture that they learned about and assimilated to kind of plays into that. So all three of these really speak to that identity, that individual, and really speaks to a struggle, the struggle to, get through those subversions that you face day to day, the struggle of that identity and changing and evolving to new identities, and really embracing the culture, really the struggle to not shy away from who the individual is and who their parents are and the culture that is as dear to them and their loved ones. So this example is the same as yesterday, so I lied. The other two examples are different. So again, this example of the personal narrative and the opinion-based essay, Indian women are never taught to be alone, and that's a problem. So again, it's about connecting with the individual, but it's also about teaching and understanding. It's about individuals that feel this way, and there's individuals that know somebody who feels this way, and there's individuals, if it's not about this, it's about something else. It validates what they have found in terms of who their personality is, what their passion is, how they're evolving. It helps validate who they are as well. This specific example really helps the individual, specifically a woman, to learn that they're not alone. We've done a lot of amazing work around like mental health and things of that nature, really inspiring stuff that really help the individual to know that they're not the only person struggling with certain thoughts, certain ideas. And it really creates that online community that's global, but also, too, finding individuals that could be in your backyard to really connect with as well. So I'm going to end with this whole concept of the platform and the consumer. Really going back to what we spoke about earlier. When it's not about scale, it's about that tactical and functional efficiency. Really, content is the needle that threads through the distribution in a way that's really impactful and powerful. And recently, I was lucky and fortunate enough to be in a small room with the CEO, and he was talking about the early stages and the early days of BuzzFeed. It started in Chinatown, New York, next to this Chinese mahjong parlor. There was a few people around a table. Read about his story too, it's fascinating, I'm not gonna get into it. But really, what he was speaking to there really left a mark on me a couple weeks ago. And what he was speaking to is, technology companies, and technology isn't really supposed to be about the technology. It's really about the consumer and unlocking what that consumer preference is. So if you see, a platform distribution, it's all about the consumer's feeling of choice. When we're looking at the platform data, something that I work in daily, we're looking at a feedback loop that is, serving content that really relates and is impactful for that reader, that viewer. And when we're looking at, the platform, how it facilitates viral and earned media, we're really looking at content that individuals want to share as a gift, as a part of themselves. So again, it's not about consumption, it's truly about the connection. So that is the presentation, and thank you guys so much, I really appreciate it.